welcome to Alien Contact. This is the second episode of Alien Contact that we are doing, and I'm saying we because Dollie was supposed to be here, but for some reason her internet didn't work today, and I tried many times to get in contact with her, but we have our star today here, and that is none less than the Mary Rodwell. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Thomas. It's lovely to speak with you again.
Yes, we met before. We met in Denmark when you were at the conference arranged by Exopolitics Denmark in 2015, and you did a wonderful lecture at the National Museum in the conference hall we had there. I remember. Yes, that was great. But we are going to hear a little bit about you today. You are the founding director of ACERN. And you are working with Indigo children as well as, and you have made a lot of conferences, and you have talked to so many people that have had UFO and alien experiences, and I'm looking so much forward to hear about some of those experiences you have with these people. But let's start with the title of this show here. It's called Alien Contact. Which kind of alien contact is what you remember best? What kind of contact have you had that you remember the best in your life?
Well, mine isn't the classic. I mean, the interesting thing with that, Thomas, is that what we're discovering is that lots of people have contact with non-human intelligences, and some of them have it through seeing a UFO or being taken on a spacecraft, you know, during the day or at night. But people can also have contact with these non-human intelligences through having a near-death experience, or through a shamanic experience, or through meditation. And mine is you know, if you like, my contacts have happened through my healing work and through working as a metaphysician. So I have not got recall of going on the spacecraft, but I've had, if you like, I believe, communication with the non-physical realm, or those beings that we call not just extraterrestrial, because some of them are interdimensional, some of them are extra-dimensional, but it's really having contact with non-human intelligences. You know, it's a broader term rather than just saying alien, because I think that limits it to a particular type of experience, when in fact people are having contact who are clairvoyants and mediums and what have you. Some of their guides they see as blue beings, or they may see them as light beings or angelic beings. But so you know, what I'm learning is that there's a very broad base to contact, and it isn't just through a UFO type of experience. So, you know, that's how broad my work has become from starting out.
You are getting wide, so to speak. Yeah, but you have talked to a lot of people. Are there some conversations you remember better than others that have meant more to you, which have burned to your memory, so to speak?
I think the most powerful for me, even though many people have extraordinary experiences, healing experiences, where, you know, they should have either died, or they should have been in a wheelchair and had talked about going up on a spacecraft and being healed, for example. Those are very powerful. But also when you hear small children speaking about going up on spacecraft, being taken to other planets. One young lady of 8 was telling me she was taken and shown Mars and shown domes on Mars, being told about beings under the surface. She spoke to me on one chat over Skype. She actually described to me that a few nights prior to that, she'd been taken and been shown a black hole and taken inside it and shown how it all works, with planets exploding and coming back together again, and being shown a wormhole. So these are the kinds of things that most of the public don't know about. These are children under 10 that are explaining some of the amazing experiences they have, as I say, being taken to other planets, being taught how to levitate, being taught how to use their third eye and their psychic abilities. And, these are children 7, 8, 9 years old. And they, I think, are very powerful because they're children that you wouldn't expect to have any kind of understanding as complex as that.
Do the children describe their experiences as a physical presence on an alien ship or as an out-of-body experience?
As both. A lot of the time they'll actually explain that they've gone in their physical body, and they will describe other children like themselves. They'll describe hybrids. This young lady of 8 that's in my new book, The New Human, she described a hybrid teacher that was part human, part not human. She was aware that this was a hybrid who was teaching her, and she explained that she called it magic school because they taught her about time and space and how it all works. So she was aware of being taught a kind of advanced physics, even though she called it magic school in her terms. She also talked about the fact that sometimes in her classroom, she would see one of the beings teaching her or saying to her, the teacher's not correct, that's not the correct information, this is the correct information. So this is in the classroom, she would see one of the beings actually correcting what the teacher was saying that was incorrect. So
yeah, it's truly amazing. It's truly amazing. But how do the children react when they're telling about seeing alien ships? Don't they get scared? Do they tell how they feel about it? Did they tell you, I was so scared, or did they tell you, oh, I felt so much joy? How did they feel by the experience that they were having?
It's a good question. A lot of them, it's quite interesting. It depends on their parents' reaction. But many of them see them as their special friends or their teachers or their guides. And one of the young 8-year-old who spoke to me told me that she calls them her fairies because she says that they take her somewhere, although they don't have proper wings. She still calls them her fairies, but she's not afraid of them. She actually says that they're my family. So many of the children really relate to the beings that they're going on spacecraft with or being taken to other planets. They feel very connected to them, and some of the children are very conscious that they came from these planets. They will say, that's where I used to live before I came and became human. And they'll talk about the fact they've come in with special abilities to actually do something to help this planet. So they will be aware that they can do certain things like understand what's going on with someone with their emotions or their feelings. They may see spirit beings around them and what have you, and orbs, and be aware that orbs are intelligences. So it's really fascinating that for a lot of the time, they're actually quite cool with it. They're quite okay with it. It's just that their parents' reaction may often dictate whether they should be worried or not. Because if the parent looks worried, then they'll say, oh, well, maybe it isn't okay then because mum looks worried or whatever. But most of the time, there isn't the fear unless they're made to fear.
But again, there are so many people who have had experiences with being taken on board on a ship. Some people call it interaction, some people call it abductions, and some people have really bad experiences with what they have experienced. When you are talking to people that have had a bad experience, what are they in general telling you? What has happened to them? They have felt a lot of pain and confusion and fear. How do you talk to them? What are you telling them? How can you help those that have had the bad experiences?
And it's very important that, I listen to how they've experienced it, because, there's a great majority that we've discovered in through our surveys with the organization of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, which is free, which is the surveys up to 3,000 individuals, 600 questions, where we ask about the ones that have had fear-based experiences and the ones that have had positive ones. 85% have had positive experiences, but about 25 to 30% will say that theirs was very scary, very fear-based, they were traumatized, and what have you. And what we've discovered is certainly some people have really terrifying experiences, and what I try and do is find out what's actually gone on. Sometimes the fear is because they don't know what's happened, so they're scared because they don't know what's happened. They just know they've been taken. For others, they want to know the agenda. You know, why me? What's it all about? So you can take them into hypnosis and find out exactly what did occur, whether or not, you know, there were things that were, and what were they scared of? And so you can help them open up that picture and find out what really went on, whether or not it was something really terrifying or whether they were just scared because they didn't know what was going on. So you can give them an opportunity to gain understanding. The ones that, sorry, go on.
How do they react after they have been in hypnosis and got closer to what really was happening? Are they still afraid, or are some of them more comfortable with it after that?
It's a good question, and actually many of them, once they understand more about the beings, which you can do in hypnosis, you can get them to ask questions, so that if they're on a table or having a procedure done, you can get them to ask the beings, what are you doing? What, you know, why have you taken me? And sometimes they will hear, we need to take some of your genetic material, or we're doing a healing procedure, or we're just checking you out like a medical exam. We want to make sure you're this, that, and the other. So they can ask the questions that have worried them maybe for many, many years. And often that shifts the way that they will understand it, because it's become known. It's no longer something we don't know. It's something that they know. And often they can ask questions of, why me? What's your connection to me? You know, have I agreed to this on any level or whatever? So a lot of they can get a lot of answers through that process if you give them the opportunity. And some of them find it's completely different to what they believed, because they've got a new understanding, and that can change the fear. It can change the way they view it. It can change a whole range of things, and they may actually become quite okay with it, although that sounds strange. The fact that they've got to understand, and often they see there's a connection, a genetic connection to some of the beings as well, because they'll say, you've got some of our genetics, and you know that you're part of us as well, and that can change the way they look at them or they interpret their experiences. Not with everyone, but for quite a majority, they will change their mind about how they view it.
How many people in general do you think having these experiences without having the memory of it?
I suspect there's a very high number of people that have had experiences and don't actually understand why they're different. Because not everyone has the same type of experience with the beings. There are some people that have all their lives, it's been benevolent, it's been loving, it's been supportive. Others will have the more fear-based type experience. Others will have, as I say, a connection through a meditation or through a shamanic kind of experience, or a kundalini, a metaphysical kind of awakening, or a near-death experience where they start to see these intelligences because it shifts their awareness or broadens their perspective. So, you know, it's really very broad, far broader than I ever believed, because we've worked with, so far, I've worked with over 3,000 individuals, and I realize it's not just the parents, it's often the grandparents. It goes through family lines right through to the children. So you think one person in a family, and then you find the siblings, the parents, the grandparents, sometimes the relatives. So you've got this whole broad umbrella of people that potentially have had experiences. Not everyone remembers, but often they'll just always feel different. They'll always have a sense there's something more going on, but they don't know how to interpret it. So I think personally that this communication or this contact is happening on a consciousness level right across the globe. Many more people than we ever believed are on one level or another through their spirituality or through other experiences, have had this form of contact.
And also those that don't believe could be between those that actually are having those experiences without being aware of it. Do you think that we have all pre-accepted what is going on, what is happening to us before we even got here, before we were born? If we talk about karma, reincarnation, and planning your next life, what do you have to go through to raise yourself to a higher level? Do you think we pre-accept that they are coming here, and then we don't know that we actually gave our accept to that they could come and take DNA samples or do abductions of us or test of us? Do you think that's possible?
Thomas, I'm a firm, from my own research, because I've worked with hypnosis for many, many years. You know, I've taken people into memories of past lives. I've taken people to the point where they've prepared to come into this life and chosen their parents, chosen their siblings, chosen their life path. So what I have always asked when they're in hypnosis, have you on any level agreed to your experiences? And most times they will say, yes, I have. Because some of them realize that these beings they're interacting with are beings that they have been. Mm. They have come from the places where their soul has come from.
They are connected to them.
Come into human form to be a kind of recorder or to participate as a human, but also connected to their star family. So it really changes the way we see the us and the them, because actually we're part of, a lot of us are part of them in the first place, but we've come in the human form to participate from this perspective rather than from that perspective. So if you're looking at the soul journey, then it changes everything. It doesn't become, you know, this us and them at all, because we're all part of the same consciousness, but we're just coming from different perspectives, you know. So that's how I've come to understand it. Not everybody may like that and not be comfortable with that. But from my work, working with hypnosis and with people going into that space, that's often what they tell me. And the children have conscious recall of coming from other star systems, from other dimensions. They'll tell me, you know, a 10-year-old told me he came through a portal in the sun from another dimension. And he was quite aware, quite consciously aware, that he'd come in to help this planet in its shift, in evolving and what have you. So if you come from that perspective, everything changes.
Well, when we are hearing children speaking about those experiences, we know that these children are very open and very... their antennas are out, so to speak. They're receiving a lot. But what when they grow up and get 30, 40, 50? Are they still sensitive the same way? Do they still have the same experiences, or is it mostly in their childhood they're having these experiences? You must have met some of them over a many-year period. What is? Can I say what is the answer to that? Are there still experiences in after they turn 50?
Well, yes and no. The sense is that those that have come in who are older generations of starseeds depends on their schooling, their education, their parents. Because if they are highly programmed or conditioned through being in a country where this is frowned upon, and you know that, and I discovered in Scandinavia that there are some places where it isn't okay to actually own you have experiences, or you are psychic or intuitive, or you know you have this, because people look at you as though there's something wrong with you. So some do shut down, but then may open up later. And I've met a lot of those that said as a child it wasn't okay for me to say that I was seeing beings. It wasn't okay to say I was seeing spirits or orbs, or I could feel energy, because my parents would say, stop being imaginative. You know, that's rubbish, or whatever.
Or their friends would say it, yes.
Yes, and they would be laughed at and what have you. So sometimes they'll shut down, but often later on, many of them start to open up again in their as they get older, and they care less about what people think.
Exactly.
And they'll say, I really don't care if you think I'm crazy anymore, because this is my reality, this is my experience. And there are some that never let it go. They are okay to be different, and they've been fortunately supported by their families or, you know, the friends around them that, you know, embrace that difference and what have you. So a lot of the time it just depends on where you are, who your family is, and what your schooling is or your programming is. And that's the only time when people will shut down, because they don't want to be too different, or they're afraid of judgment, or afraid of ending up in a mental hospital or something like that.
I have a very good example from myself of exactly what you just said there. When I was 4 years old, I had to cross this road and got hit by a car and ended up underneath this car. As I'm laying underneath this car, I can feel that something is terribly wrong. I'm still within my body, but I'm, at the same time I'm outside my body. I see from my eyes while I'm laying underneath this car, and I'm actually seeing through the car, and I'm laying under the middle of the car. It almost ran all the way over me. And while I'm laying there, I can't move, I can't speak, I can't do anything else than observe what's going on. I can hear everything, I can see everything. And my mom and my stepdad were standing in front of the car, and my mom was in terrible shock, you know, and my stepdad was there too and trying to comfort her, and the neighbors ran out and they all stood in a circle around the car and waiting for the rescue team to come and lift the car up so they could get me out while I was laying there. And I was not awake while I was there. I was knocked out, but I was still present and saw everything. And while I was laying underneath this car, these two beings in white dresses with white helmets was coming up and standing next to my mom and comforting her, saying, "Oh, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. Don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. He's not gonna be hurt." And I could just feel my body was getting warmer and warmer, and something was happening to my body as they were speaking to my mom. And I remember also, I thought, my mom was so rude because she just ignored them. She didn't even look at them or speak to them as they were speaking to her. And then the rescue team came up, and I remember those two beings stood up and in each side of the car and did something when the rescue team put the jacket underneath the car and lifted up. And I remember just before the rescue team come, one of the white beings said to the other, "Can we take our helmets off now?" And the other guy or being said, "No, he's not ready for that yet." And that was the end of that discussion between those two beings. And I remember everything as it was yesterday. And the rescue team came, lifted up the car, and as soon as they grabbed me on my leg and slowly tried to pull me out, I came back to my body and became conscious again, and everything was back to normal. I could see, I could talk, I could feel, I could touch, I could walk, and I got off, gave my mom a big hook, and said, "Who were those guys? Where are they?" And she was like, "What?" "Yeah, the white guys in the white dresses with the white helmets." And she was just like, "What are you talking about, boy?" And that experience, I told most of my friends about it in my teenage years, and I was laughed at all the way through my teenage years, every time I spoke about experiences like that, until I became older and started talking to someone that understood me and have had the same experiences, and that opened me up and made me understand that you can talk about this to whoever you want, but the response you get is very different depending on the person you are speaking to. And as you just said, as you get older, you care the less about what other people think or saying about you. You learn to talk to those that are equal to you. You attract equal people, and just suddenly I was surrounded of people who wanted to hear my story, who could tell similar stories, and all those that laughed at me while I was a teenager and a young boy, they are not even around me anymore. I'm surrounded by people who understand me and wanted to know. But of course I'm not going up to my work, to my colleagues and saying, "Now listen what happened to me when I was a child," because I learned my lesson. That information is something that is to be kept in me and between those that are equal to me. So what you said about we don't care anymore what other people think is yes, that was spot on.
Absolutely. and the thing is with this, Thomas, I'd like to ask you, have you got any sense of who those beings were that were comforting your mother? Do you get any sense of...
Yes. Yes, I do, and normally people are talking about guardian angels. I call them my guardian aliens because I'm not religious. I don't see God as one being sitting above them all with his divine power and making miracles. I see our creators and all those together as God. So if you ask me what is God, I would say God are those beings that created us, not one single being with the divine power. We are God because we are part of in family with all those beings that have created us. When we are not here, we are doing exactly what they are doing to us and with us. So who is God? God is them. They are us, we are God, so God is you and me, and they were my guardian aliens, as I love to call them.
Yeah, and they were humanoid too, from what you were saying. They were humanoid beings.
My mom is about here to she's a bit lower than me, and they were smaller than my mom. They were 20 centimeters smaller than my mom. I would estimate them to be just around my chest in height. So they were not normal human size, but they were in the size they were human looking with their physical bodies. But they were wearing these white dresses. And white helmets that was it was almost like they were not reflecting, like they were like sending light out, so to speak. You didn't get blinded by it, but there were light beings, if I could say that word, in a physical body right here, right now, when I was lying underneath that car, and that is something that I will never ever forget. I have had other experiences later, but that's experiences for another day.
I was just wondering, did you see them again? Have you met them again? You know, on the front
not those two specific beings that was that day, because we have, and that's just my opinion. You're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but our guardian aliens or guardian angels are not the same all the way through our life. They are having warriors, people or souls they have to switch between, and they all having periods. So some of them are there in your childhood from you are 0 to 4, and then you get someone else who's used to work with the humans from age 4 to 10, and so on and so on. So I haven't seen them since, and I think they fulfilled their task while they was there 100%, and I am thankful for having them around me when I was a child.
Yeah. And your out-of-body experience, have you experienced that ever again? You know, that feeling of your consciousness being separate from your body?
I have had out-of-body experiences, yes, but that was in a very other context. I was taken out of my body and showing something that I was actually studying. But again, that is a long story for another interview. We can talk about that another day if you want to, but I have many experiences. I can't do that in half an hour. And not to forget that this is about Mary Rodwell, not about Thomas Mikey. I was hijacking the interview here. I'm sorry.
No, I'm always very interested in what brought you into doing what you're doing, because there's always a reason why someone is doing this kind of work. You encouraging the whole topic to be exposed means that it was very important to you on some level. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it, would you?
I have always felt that I was dragged into all this with UFOs and aliens, and a few years ago I started these Mars anomalies, studying Mars via the NASA pages and pictures from the rovers and satellites, and I felt dragged to go to specific pages where I did find specific anomalies that has actually, some of them has been going worldwide and viral on the internet after I have posted them on Facebook, and they have been used by international speakers at conferences also around the world. And actually last year I was invited to be a speaker at the 5th annual Mars conference in Alabama, and I'm going again this year in May to speak about Mars and anomalies and satellites and robots, rovers on Mars. So all this is combined and belonging together. If I have to find the right word in English, but it all comes together with spirituality, UFO sighting, guardian aliens, out-of-body experiences. You are being guided to do a lot of stuff. I have been guided all through my life to do what I'm doing. When I'm doing an interview with you now here, I'm being guided to do this. And I don't think I was guided to misunderstood the time zones, which I have done several times before, but let's not talk about that.
It's all cool. It's all cool, Thomas. Don't worry. I'm really interested in your Mars because the children have told me about, going and being shown Mars and being shown the anomalies on Mars and the domes on Mars, and they've drawn them as well. And I've also spoken to experiencers that have said they've had lifetimes on Mars where, the pyramids and some of the hieroglyphs that are there that are not being shared publicly, that they remember from a past life and what have you. So, there's a really wonderful tie-in there to what you're doing and to what I'm hearing from the children and also older experiencers that remember being on Mars in another lifetime or being taken there even this time and being shown some of the things they did in another lifetime on Mars. So there's all that ties in.
I wish I could be shown Mars. I would so much love to see it. I've never been there for some reason, but I heard of a lot of other people who said they have been told their experiences about being on Mars, seeing life on Mars. And I do believe there is life on Mars, and I do believe that I have a connection to Mars from past life, and I have found anomalies that point in the direction of life on Mars. And I do believe that NASA, that is giving us these images, are manipulating these images to hide the truth from us, because not everybody in this world is ready to know the truth, and I think most of those who is not ready are those with the powers and the money and the oil, because they know if the truth come out, they will probably not be as rich as they are within 5 or 10 years, and they will lose power, and people will start asking, how is a political system on another planet? Do they use money? How is your economy there? Have you an economy? Do you have money at all? Or how do you buy stuff? Or how do you work? Do you have a council? Do you have a government? And if you have, how do they work? So that are all questions that people with power here on this earth not are interested in coming up or bringing up to the surface, because that would bring them to a fall. Because I think we are pretty much aware of the way we are ruling. Our governments around the world are ruling our planet is not the right way to do it, and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and the cliff between those two is getting wider and wider, and they know it, and they are getting so many money out of it that they are blinded by this power and money that they would never change their mind, and they would never say, oh, let's just give up all this and make a better world for all. That's not something they're interested in. I am interested in that. I would like to create a better world for everybody, but those with the power that needs to push the buttons around in the different governments are not willing to do that, because they would lose money, they would lose power. Even though everybody would get a better life and everybody would be able to have food every day. Some people don't have food, and some people throw out food every day, and that would be equalized, so to speak, so everybody would get what they needed. Even if that would happen, people would not give up their power or their money or their big houses or their big fine cars, or so on and so on and so on, and I could keep talking about this forever.
Oh, I agree with you, absolutely 100%. And it's what we're all seeing, this inequality where most of the population is just ending up being slaves to a small percentage of those, that are owning the planet and owning us in the process. So I think we're in a shift. People are waking up to that, Thomas, which I think is really wonderful. And these children, I think, have come in to help shift it. I think so.
Have anybody of those that you have been talking to talked about political systems on other planets?
Yes, to a certain extent. When they come, they will explain how money isn't used at all, that everybody has the opportunity to explore their abilities and their awareness for the benefit of everybody. And there's never any need for, having to pay for things, because everything is available to everyone and everyone just shares what they have, because and nobody goes without. So they're saying, it's a system that works well because you go with whatever talents you have and with those that you can utilize for the benefit of the whole group. And what you need also, some say you can manifest it. You don't need to pay for it because you can actually manifest it. So if you need something, you create it. So that's some of the things that they say. And I think a lot of these new children will be able to do that. They'll be able to manifest in the way some of the avatars that came to our planet have shown that they can manifest something just by thinking and creating it. This is where we, I believe, are going to. This is how it will shift and change. That's my belief anyway, from my research and what I'm finding. So we won't always be like this. It won't always be like this.
And now we got Dollie back on the line here. She got internet. Hi, Dollie. Welcome.
Hello. Well, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I had a problem with internet connections. We've been having storms here in the UK.
Say hello to Mary Rodwell.
Hello, Mary. Such a long time I have waited to speak to you in person. Hello, finally.
Oh, Dollie, it's lovely to connect with you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dollie, I know you probably have a lot of questions also that you want to give Mary. We got 10 minutes left here. Do you want to ask Mary something specific?
Well, yes. I know Mary talks with many star children. And the question I wanted to ask is, do many star children connect to you through desperation, or do they just want answers?
Well, when we talk about star children, are we talking about the children in the families, or are we talking about the teenagers, or, the star seeds in general here?
The star seeds in general, and yeah. The ones that are old enough and conscious enough to find you.
Well, what we're talking about is, even individuals in their 70s or 80s and even, 90s that have been aware all along that they've been different, although they've, not had necessarily as much conscious recall as some of the children seem to have in these new generations that I've just written about in my book. The fascinating thing is that there are some that have had an awakening in recent years where they've gone from being very 3D into realizing there's a bigger picture, that they're part of a bigger mandate, that they've come to help with this planet. And there'll be parents that will contact me about their children, saying their children say they've come from other planets. They say they've come to help this planet and that they've got abilities to do so. So sometimes they just want information. Sometimes they just want to know how to support, their children that are having experiences as well as themselves. So there's a lot of different needs. Some say, mine are different programs. They may be ADHD, or they may be Indigos, or they may be Asperger's. Are they part of this new, if you like, shift in awareness that is happening on the planet? So it can be a whole range of things that they're seeking. And my job is primarily to listen, to provide support, and also perhaps to offer some connections if they want that, and to maybe offer some understanding from others that have had experience.
That is amazing. So so you have to go through a series, I'm guessing, of in-depth questions with them. Because how do you just work out what they need?
Well, it's very simple. Initially, a lot of people are questioning their experiences. They want to know whether it's real or whether or not, they're in some way having, an aberration or a hallucination. And what I will do primarily is send them a questionnaire. And my questionnaires are pretty broad. They're not just about one thing. They're about feelings, knowings, strange dreams, anomalous experiences in their lives. And then when they've done that and they've actually seen how many things link, I will then ask them what's significant in those questions for them. What has really, had an impact on them? And also, what is it they most feel they need? For some people, they just want to connect with others. So others want information to verify their own experiences or validate their experiences. Others want to explore a missing time episode, or they want to understand more of what's going on for them. Why them? What's it all about?
Why them?
What does it mean? All those. So it can be a variety of all of that, or they're just feeling isolated and they just need someone to hear them.
I was just going to say to you, one of the biggest questions I receive to my Star Children page is about the loneliness. How do we get over this loneliness? Many starseeds feel like they've been left, abandoned, or very, very misunderstood in this world. What do we say to them?
Well, I mean, it's a very common one, primarily because maybe family or friends don't want to hear it, don't want to know, or, generally think there's something wrong with them. And one of the things that I say, first of all, is to try and connect, which is what you're trying to do, is provide, avenues for people to connect with others like themselves. But one of the interesting things, Dollie, that I think is important for people is I say, when they say, well, I've never met anyone like me, and the first question I will ask them is, have you owned it fully in yourself and accepted it in yourself first? Because that's the frequency then that will draw others to you. If you're still in that place of conflict where you haven't quite acknowledged this is who you are and your reality, then you're not going to pull in the same frequency. And I know you understand that.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It's about owning who you are, and as you own who you are, you then start to put out a different frequency, which will bring others to you and also enable you to connect with others.
Yes, and that was my next question. Many say to me, Dollie, how do you know that you are a starseed? And my answer might be the same as yours, and it's connecting with that starseed part of yourself and realising that you are connected to everything and anything all at once.
I mean, that's the challenge now for all the starseeds on the planet, is to start owning who they are and trusting that feeling, that sensing, that knowing, rather than, taking everybody else's information and their own understanding of their own reality and allowing that to influence your feeling, sensing and knowing of yourself, and saying, you know what? You're entitled to how you see the reality in your world and how you feel. I'm entitled to know who I am and where I'm from and what makes sense to me and what is my reality. And that is really then owning yourself and owning who you are. And in that is the power. Because once you do that, then it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Absolutely. Have I lost you? Are you still there, both of you?
That's all right.
I'm listening. I'm just saying.
I was just going to ask as well to Mary that a lot of starseeds that are now adults really have a struggle, and a lot of them suffer with addiction or they get stuck in cycles. Do you notice this as well?
It's actually very understandable, because if you've had your reality denied right from a small child, you try and share it with, your peer groups, either at school or as a teenager, and they laugh at you or they make you feel there's something wrong with you. The only way then is to shut it down and try and be normal. So you shut it down. How do you do that? Either with drugs or with alcohol or with anything else that will stop you feeling different to everybody else, because everyone wants to be, as teenagers particularly, everyone wants to be the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
You don't want to be different. You're not comfortable being different. So it's only till after that, when you start to realize that you can be different and it can be okay, that maybe then, and it depends then if you're, if you have got addicted by this point into, those particular strategies that in one way keep you safe.
Coping strategies,
it dumbs it down, so you're not quite so different, but at the same time it also stops you connecting to who you really are again, and for you to expand and be and do what you've come here to do. So that then it's about, can I be brave enough to let this go and actually start to own who I am and to actually expand and to be all I can be. And for everyone it's different. Some people are going to find it easier than others. People are very, very sensitive as starseeds. They sometimes don't want to be that sensitive. They don't want to know what somebody else is thinking. They don't always want to know somebody else's emotions. They don't always want to be that sensitive in that way. So they may also take stuff to shut that down a bit because it's too hard.
Yes.
So it's about understanding why many of them are doing this and why so many get drawn to different substances and whatever. It is really hard to be on
It's hard.
It's a very dense planet, isn't it?
It is. And I was just thinking about the little ones. There are so many new ones, as you know, that are arriving here on the earth. And these ones are as bright as little buttons. And, what do we do for them now as starseed parents, bringing up the new starseed generation? What's the leading pathway for them?
Well, in my new book, The New Human, basically I've got about 9 chapters on the children, and it's their stories. It's them saying how their abilities, what they can see, what they're aware of. They're aware of what planets they've come from or what dimension they're from. They're aware of being taken up on spacecraft and being taught on spacecraft with different types of beings. Many of them say they're my family. I've come here with these skills. So they're consciously aware of their interactions. They're consciously connected to their star families and what have you. And they're also knowing what their abilities are, for example. So when you've got them that aware, many of them are telepathic. And the new programs that I talk about are not just the indigos and the crystals, but the ADHDs, which are
the Asperger's,
and Asperger's, dyslexia. All of those are new programs. So what we really have to do is look at a whole new way of educating these children in a way that we're giving them power over their own, if you like, support. So they tell us what they need to be all they can be. So it's actually the reverse of what we do on this planet at the moment, where we think we know best. Actually, it's the children are going to tell us what we need to provide for them to be all they need to be. And this is a whole new way of looking at how we support and educate these new children. I talk about it in my book, a new way, a holistic way of teaching these children and giving them the support they need so they can bring their skills and advance their skills on this planet. We will provide the environment for them to do it. We're not telling them what to do. They'll tell us what they need. That is the new way, and this is what needs to happen with these children.
That is astounding. What do you think, Thomas? That is amazing stuff.
It is truly amazing stuff, and everything that Mary have told us about here today has been amazing, and we have been talking for over an hour now, and we are just a few minutes away from ending this interview with Mary. So I was glad you just got the chance to join in here the last 10 minutes, Dollie. That was great. But I also I want to change the path of this interview a little bit, because before we end, I would like to ask you, Mary, you have been talking to so many people that have had experiences, been taken on board, seen alien, cooperated with other beings, and so on and so on. But have you yourself at any time experienced the same on your own soul, being taken on board and met other species?
That's a very interesting question. I have no conscious memory. I do interact with the non-physical team, but I do that through a different method of communication, which, you know, anyone who's intuitive knows what I'm talking about, where you have a kind of, if you like, telephone link, I call it.
Wi-Fi. I call it a Wi-Fi, you know, a human Wi-Fi link.
But people have said, there are people that have said they've seen me up on the craft, but I have no conscious memory, so plainly they're not letting me know about that right now. But that doesn't matter, because as I said to you, communication can happen through having near-death experiences or a shamanic experience or through meditation. It doesn't rely primarily or always by going up in the spacecraft. Communication is happening once you open up to your multidimensional self.
Absolutely.
So we all have communication. It doesn't happen one way or another.
I think we are having a star child in the background that needs his mother. I can hear Dollie.
Yes, I have a very beaming little star child.
And with these words, I would like to say thank you a million times to Mary Rodwell.
Thank you.
You are a star. You are astonishing. You are fantastic, and I hope to meet you again in this life.
Yes.
Sooner or later. So let us know if you are coming to Europe or Denmark or England, and we will have to meet up and catch up where we lived last time.
Thomas, it's an absolute pleasure, and Dollie, I'm really glad we got a chance to say hello as well.
Finally, thank you, and I know we'll connect more, Mary. I just know that.
I'm sure we will. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And for all of you out there, you can go to marsmoonspace.com. You can find this interview with Mary. You can find interview with Susie Hansen that actually was at the same conference as Mary was giving a lecture. And you can find a lot of other interviews under the link saying alien contacts or disclosure in the top. There are a lot of interesting persons there. We have Patty Greer also, and we are working on getting some other known names onto us also. And before we end, we're going to say that Dollie is working on a new project called Global Frequency Radio that will bring a lot of people and their thoughts out to the world. Also stay tuned for that. You can find more info very soon on marsmoonspace.com. And until we see us again out there, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Lovely to talk with you both.
Grace and peace to you.